Hey everybody, how you doing? Tekking101 here, and I would like to wish all of my fans a glorious Valentine's Day. I love you all. I bought you all flowers. All 300 and I think like 69,000 of you, but you take the flowers. Just take the there you go. You got the flowers? Did the flowers get there? Did they pop out of your computer screen? Okay, we're good. Now, in my humble opinion, though, the best way to celebrate Valentine's Day is not with flowers, it's with copious amounts of Reese miniatures, which, okay, to be fair, is the only way I've ever celebrated Valentine's Day, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. You know, I don't know if the mad genius that figured out chocolate and peanut butter go as well together as chocolate and peanut butter, but that man deserves a Pulitzer Prize if he hasn't been given one. Yeah, even if he's dead, you gotta give it to him posthumously or something. This is like the discovery of the century. Really good. Okay, so despite Valentine's Day being the centerpiece for today, we're not talking about romantic love, because while that does exist in the One Piece world, you know, Oda has come out and said he's not really going to go all romantic with the Straw Hats. He's not going to be like, you know, Sanji and Nami walking down the aisle by the end of the series. So if that's what you're looking forward to, well, there's plenty of fanfics for that. I've read a few of them, actually. But no, One Piece is more about a friendship kind of love. You know, it's about camaraderie with your friends, you know, some of which happen to be cyborgs, others are skeletons, but it's about you and your nakama getting together and going off on an epic adventure, you know, on the seven seas. You know, that's what the spirit of One Piece is really about. And with that being said, we're going to talk about the most loyal friend in all of One Piece. And it's not even a Straw Hat. It is a man. You know what, though? This man deserves to be an honorary Straw Hat for all the crap he's been through. This man, Mr. Two Bon Clay. He keeps giving of himself just so Luffy can achieve his dreams. That's a true friend right there. Even in the depths of hell, the flowers of friendship can blossom. So yeah, Mr. Two, you know, I've talked about him before. We did the Mane Mane no Mi video last year, I believe, but I think it's the best time to give him a video. He deserves it, all right? And, you know, his first impressions of the dude, I mean, he was a little out there. He introduced the whole concept of Okama in the One Piece world. You know, later on we find out everything about Emporio in Ivankov, and there's an entire island of Okamas, and there's an entire, you know, martial arts centered around it. There's actually two, Okama Kempo and Newkama Kempo. So pretty dang cool. In fact, the other day I was on the One Piece subreddit and I saw this really funny fan art that the reason that Sanji keeps the other eye hidden is because it's actually covered with mascara and he learned the death wink from Ivankov. Now, that's just fan art, but I think that would be very funny if, you know, Sanji's up against a wall and he's like, oh man, my Diable Jambe doesn't work, even the raid suit doesn't work. Well, looks like I gotta use it. Hell wink. You know, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, it introduced the whole concept through Mr. Two Bon Clay, and the first time we got to see him, do you remember that? It was actually at Little Garden, because what happened was Crocodile got that message from Sanji, who he thought was Mr. 3, and Crocodile was like, Mr. 2, go to Little Garden and exterminate Mr. 3. He's no longer a use to this organization. And so Mr. 2 goes out with his crew. They arrive at Little Garden. Mr. 3 is nowhere to be found at that point. He hightailed it out of there. And so we just see him like beating the crap out of his subordinates with his Okama Kempo, or in the 4Kids dub, his crazy karate. He also talks with like a southern hick accent, so I don't know, that's just the way that 4Kids decided to translate his character. I don't know, I don't get it either, so don't ask me. But, rather imposing, because he's like, oh, you know, where's Mr. 3? He's supposed to be here, sir. Oh, well, he's not. Yeah, I know. Boom! You know, and just beating the crap out of his own subordinates, and he's like, let's go! Get on the boat! We're heading back to freaking Alabasta or whatever. So we get introduced to him. He's a pretty strong character. We know he's going to be one of the major villains in the Alabasta saga, but we had no idea how Oda was going to take this character and, like, twists and turns, you know, beyond this. You know, we thought, oh, okay, he's a villain. He gets taken out by the end of the arc, and then we move on to the next story. Now, the next time we see him is a little bit under more happier circumstances, because he gets fished out of the water by Luffy and Usopp, and he's on the Mary, and they don't know that he's the enemy yet, so he's just showcasing his gratitude, and he's like, let me put on a show for all of you, and he has the power of the Mane Mane no Mi, which allows him to show them Nami's boobs, which, oh wait, I don't think that's the main power of the Mane Mane no Mi. I think it has something to do with copying people, but the main power is showing people Nami's boobs. That's the ultimate ability he unlocked, okay? But anyway, he becomes friends with Luffy and Shaw Chopper and Usopp, they all seem to really get along with him. Everybody else on the crew is just kind of like, all right, this guy's kind of a weirdo. But after that, he gets back on his ship and he sails away, and it's only then when Vivi realizes, because they call him Mr. 2, and his ship has a giant 2 on it, that's when Vivi realizes, that's Mr. 2! And everyone's like, what? Huh? How do you not know that? It was like, I never met him before. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Not the kind of guy you would exactly forget after meeting just once, you know? But anyway, yeah, so he's like, oh, he was a villain. He was the guy we have to beat. And so we cut to Alabasta, and his abilities is actually really useful because he was able to transform into all the different Straw Hats, so Crocodile and all the other members of Baroque Works were able to learn what they looked like, except for Sanji, because Sanji was below deck. Mr. 2 never even met him, so Mr., well, Mr. Prince, I guess, which... You get it, Mr. Prince, because he turned out to actually be a prince, managed to sneak into rain dinners and managed to get away scot-free with all that because they didn't know who he was. But anyway, Sanji ends up fighting him, and it's a little bit of a hard fight for him because Nami's boobs. But he manages to figure out the trick of the Mane Mane no Mi in that, yes, Mr. 2 can transform into Nami, but he can't do that while still maintaining the same level of power and training in his Okama Kempo, because a downside of the Mane no Mi is whenever you copy somebody, you're copying how they exist at that point in time, okay? And you can't copy their devil fruits or their haki or anything like that. It could be useful for copying, like, their muscles, because it's a head-to-toe transformation. It's not like he's just copying their face, although he can do that as well. If he just wants to copy somebody's nose or somebody's hair, he can do that, but it's mostly just the entire body transforms. So, you know, he copied Zoro. He could transform into Zoro and have Zoro's muscles and everything. The problem is Zoro has never really trained in Okama Kempo, so he can't use any of his Okama Kempo techniques while in Zoro's body. He can only do it in his body because his body's actually trained for it, right? You could maybe bring up an issue. It's like, well, the knowledge and the training of the martial art, that should be in your mind, that should be in your brain, not necessarily in your body, but you have to account for, like, muscle memory and things like that, so there's a reason why he can't do it. He'd be kind of overpowered if he could just use his abilities no matter in what body. But then later on in Punk Hazard, we had that kind of same issue when the Straw Hats get body swapped and Sanji gets put in Nami's body, and he could still use, like, blue walk and everything, but it's a lot more strenuous on Nami's frame. So yeah, just roll with it. So Sanji and him fight. He figures out the weakness, and it's a pretty epic finish. You know, they basically just have these crazy aerial, you know, kicks, and then eventually they just slam into each other and they get sent flying, and then Mr. 2 stays down, and then Sanji gets back up and he's like, ugh, well, I think I busted a few of my ribs up again, but I win. And so he walks away. And you think that's it. I mean, like, all the other Baroque Works agents are down. You know, it's not like we hear from Mr. 5 anymore, or, you know, Usopp and Chopper take out Mr. 4. It's not like Mr. 4 shows up at the end of the arc and is like, hey, Straw Hats! Have a nice journey. I'm gonna be a pizza delivery boy now. You know, it's like he's gone, and we're not gonna see him again, except in a cover page. But, you know, Mr. 2, though, little bit of a weird exception to that rule, where at the very end of the arc, he contacts them on a Den Den Mushi, and it's like the whole issue with the Mary, because the Mary was docked at a precarious place where the Marines would find it, so Mr. 2 and his crew defect from Baroque Works. I mean, Baroque Works is pretty much demolished at this point, when Crocodile got shot through the freaking roof of a tomb, and then like, oh, boom, alright, yeah, I don't think we're going to be getting this month's paycheck from Baroque Works. We should probably get out of here. So Mr. 2 gets the Going Merry and sails it to a rendezvous point with the Straw Hats where it would be safe from the Marines, because Hina and everybody is arriving on the scene at that point. And it's like, why are you doing this, man? You know, why are you going out, putting your neck out for us? And Mr. 2 is just like, because we're friends, aren't we? And everyone's like, yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, fighting you guys, that was business. That was Crocodile's, you know, thing. He hired us to do that, but Crocodile's not around anymore, so we have no real loyalties to Baroque Works, so we're certainly not going to pick up the mantle where Crocodile left off. It's not like, well, Crocodile might have been defeated, but Baroque Works lives on in me, Mr. 2 Bon Clay. It's like, dude, I'm not into that sort of thing, you know, so you and I met each other at sea. We were friends, you know, we had a little happy dance together, you know, we're buddies, even though that blonde guy beat the crap out of me and whatever. It's all good, you know, right? So everything's fine. And so they sail off, and when Hina began the encirclement trap of the Straw Hats, Mr. 2 and his crew managed to fool them by Mr. 2 transforming into Luffy and his crew dressing up as crude, you know, just costumes of the Straw Hats. I would imagine because Mr. 2's motive is transformation, cloning. All the other members of his crew, they can't do that, obviously, but I imagine they have like a bunch of like props and like funny wigs and like fake mustaches and things inside of their ship, so they can mimic a lot of people. They can copy what Mr. 2 is doing, even though they can't do it perfectly. That's kind of the idea of the crew. So yeah, so they end up getting captured by Hina and getting sent to jail. There was like a little side story there where Miss Golden Week's meat broke. You get to see Mr. 2. He did manage to escape from Hina, but it didn't last very long, and he ended up getting captured again, and then they all ended up getting thrown in jail, and then Crocodile, Mr. 2, Mr. 1, and Mr. 3 all ended up getting sent to Impel Down. If you're ever curious about how they ended up there, read that cover series, Mrs. Golden Week's Meat Baroque. That explains everything of what happened ever since after Alabasta all the way up to Impel Down. Really good cover series there. But, at any rate, he gets sent to level 3 of Impel Down. A little bit odd, because, we know that Mr. 2's bounty was like, 32 million, something like that, and we find out that level 3 is only supposed to be reserved for prisoners that have 50 million or more, so his bounty might have been increased at some point, you know, ever since he escaped capture the first time. Maybe it was raised a little bit, and then they found him again, or maybe they just viewed him as enough of a threat to have a special exception. They sent him to starvation hell, and, he was really the only you know, inmates in level 3 that was immune from the effects of it, because level 3 is just a vast desert made up of literally just the crumbling dust of inmate skeletons that have died there previously from dehydration and starvation. So that's kind of grim. That's not a very cheery kind of place to hang out. And they barely give enough food and water for the inmates to survive, and it's super sweltering hot in that place because of the under it you have level 4, the burning heat hell. But despite all of that, Mr. 2, he was still, oh, everybody, plie, plie, like, come on, you all look like a bunch of mummies. Oh, okay, that guy really is a mummy. He died yesterday. But aside from that, come on, everybody, plie, plie, you know, okay. So, very energetic guy. Also, I guess, you know, Impel Down is not really that concerned with contraband or anything. Like, they pretty much just chuck the pirates in there and they give them the prisoner outfit, but, like, Crocodile was allowed to keep his hook, you know, and Mr. 2 was able to keep his makeup. He's like, well, we're going to give him makeup. I mean, we might be the demons of hell, but we're not monsters. That's actually one of my favorite lines that Mr. 2 had, is when Mr. 2 and Luffy meet back up in Starvation Hell and they defeat the Minotauros. You know, the Minotauros, you know, smacked Mr. 2 right in the head with that spiked club he had. Mr. 2 gets back up and he's like, he's not really that concerned about his gaping head wound that's like bleeding profusely. He's just like, he messed up my cosmetics. I need cosmetics. Also, booze and blood and tears. Oh, come my way. You know, just like, okay, you know what? I like you. You're good. You're good. You're very dedicated to it. You're dedicated to it, all right? So, after that, Luffy and Mr. 2, they go up to the, like, that area that's above level 4, and Mr. 2 is showing him where, you know, how you get down to level 4 from here. You pretty much just jump down, but be careful, Straw Boy, because there happens to be a giant vat of boiling blood at the bottom of this, so you might want to watch where you land. But other than that, you just jump straight down. So, we're at this point, Buggy and Mr. 3 were just kind of trying to manipulate Luffy for their own gains. Mr. 2 is a genuine ally of Luffy and genuinely wants to help him find and rescue his brother, okay? So it's like, awesome, Luffy has an ally. So they're heading through level 4, and Bon Clay warns Luffy multiple times, like, if, you know, Warden Magellan's office is on this floor. If you run into Magellan, run. Just run. Don't even try to fight him. You're not gonna win. You're gonna fail. He can use poison. He will poison you, and that'll be it. Don't even let it touch you, alright? So if you see him, you gotta run in the opposite direction. Then, of course, they run into Magellan, and what does Luffy do? It's like, well, I gotta fight him. I'm like, crap. And Mr. 2 even tries to give him an option to run away. He uses his Mane powers to transform into Luffy, but he's still he can't transform clothing. That's the one thing he can't do, and weapons as well. So, he's still wearing his prisoner uniform, but he's like, Luffy, I'll distract him, you get away. And Magellan's not an idiot, so he's like, well, obviously the one wearing the prison outfit is not Straw Hat. Like, oh, Right, well, whatever. But Luffy decides to stay while Mr. 2 just leaves. He bails, you know. He's like, I'm sorry, Straw Hat, but I can't fight him. You were just set up to fail. And this was something that he really felt guilt over, you know. Like, he almost immediately turned back. It's not like he left and just, he was gone. You know, he left, but he felt really bad about it. And he turned around pretty much almost immediately. But by that point, you know, it's too late because Magellan already floored him and he's covered with all this toxic poison. But pretty soon as that happened, Mr. 2 devised a plan to get, you know, to rescue Straw Hat from level 5. He disguised himself as Hannibal, and he's like, we have to figure out a way. He went into the office, like the doctor's office, and he's like, you need to come up with a antidote for Straw Hat. It's like, we can't. There's just too much poison in his system. Like, dang it. But that's where we really get to it, where he goes into level 5, and he has to get stripped of all of his clothing, and he's going through the freezing hell, but it doesn't matter. Even though it's like parts of his body are falling off from frostbite, he's like, I will save my friend. Now, at this point, you think, like, it couldn't get any more emotional. It couldn't get any more powerful than this. But you're wrong, sir. This is One Piece we're talking about. So, after he gets Luffy, they get attacked by the wolves, they get rescued by Inazuma, they get taken to New Kama Land. That's another one of my favorite moments from Mr. 2, where he wakes up and he walks over to the stage area where Ivankov is putting on that rockin' song, you know, and just like, welcome to New Kama Land, everybody. And Mr. 2, who's already, he's an Okama as well, and he's a weird guy. He's looking at this, and even this is something that's like, what is this place? You know, huh? Did I die and go to heaven? You know, basically that kind of reaction, so I like that. But then, after Ivankov explains everything, what happened to Luffy and his poisoning and his treatment, you know, he's going through this absolute hell, just his cells just dying and regenerating, and whether or not he's going to survive is going to be dedicated solely to his willpower. You know, Ivankov has done everything that, you know, they could do. Like, I gave him the healing hormones, okay? That boosted his chances of survival from 0 to at least, like, 2%. But beyond that, it's all on him, right? And so, this is the crowning moment of Mr. 2, where it might not be as theatrical as breaking into level 5 and freezing and you're trying to find his friend, but it's much more powerful, in my opinion, where all Mr. 2 does for like a solid, like, I think it was like 12 hours. It was a long time. He's just standing outside this door and just cheering on Luffy. Just like, you can do it, Straw Hat! You can do it! And he's just cheering him on, and eventually all the other members of New Kama Land, they are swayed by Bonchan's, you know, friendship for Luffy and how much he cares about him, and they all start cheering as well. And eventually you have the entire area, like even Ivankov and Inazuma are joining in, and they're cheering for him. And eventually Luffy comes out and he's healed, and he doesn't even remember, but, you know, Ivankov tells him, like, I highly doubt that his cheering, you know, I mean, it had to affect your recovery in some way. You know, it was, even if you can't remember it exactly, you know, his motivation, his drive to let you live on, it had to affect you in some way while you were in the depths of hell. And the fact that Luffy healed so quickly, it also had to have some effects. So, yeah, that's the true sign of friendship, you know, shouting until your throat is like you're coughing up blood. Even after, I mean, he's already beaten up at this point. He just went through sub-zero temperatures, attacked by a freaking pack of wolves, and he's bandaged up from head to toe, but even then, he's like, you can do it! You can do it! You know, so that was a very powerful moment. After that point, they all decide to break out of Impel Down, and Mr. 2 assists them along the way. But this is where we get to the finale, and this is, I apologize. He made it out. For so long, for like years, we thought Mr. 2 died right there in Impel Down. But he managed to make it out alive, so this story does have a happy ending. And we also got a Viva card of him recently that talked about him a little bit, so we'll get into that. But it's like, they're approaching level 1, right? They're getting there, you know, Jinbei, Crocodile, everybody's approaching it. And I think it was Jinbei that Bon Clay kind of stopped and talked to and just like, hey, listen, I know Luffy's not going to agree with this, so don't even bother telling him, but, you know, even if we do somehow manage to get all the way up to the top of the building, and then we somehow manage to get open the door, and we somehow manage to steal a ship, and we somehow manage to sail out of here, there's still a really big obstacle in our way, and I think you know what that is. And Jinbei, of course, he's like, oh, it's the Gate of Justice. Like, yeah, and there's really no way you can cheat your way through that. There's no way you can't really you can't break it. I guess you really can't go under it because the whirlpools and the currents, like, there's really no way you can get around that. The only way is to have it open for you. That's the only way you're getting through the gates of justice. And so Mr. 2 is like, I'm the only one that can do this. I need to go disguise myself as Magellan. I copied him from earlier. Disguise myself as Magellan, go into the control room, and order them to open up the gates. And that's the best thing. That's the only way we're going to do this. And Jinbei agreed, of course, and he went and he gave Jinbei instructions like, you cannot tell Luffy about this. If you tell Straw Hat, he's going to turn back and try to save me, and you can't have that. You have to get to Marineford to save his brother because I'm his friend, and I care about him, and you need to make sure this happens, Jinbei. I'm sure Jinbei was moved a little bit there, a little whale shark tear down his eye. He's like, I understand, strange, Swan man, I will do this for you. So, because Jinbei doesn't really know Mr. 2 at all at that point either, they just really met each other, right? So anyway, though, he does that, his plan goes off without a hitch, he disguises himself as Magellan, they get the gate open and they go through, and this is a moment where right before they go through, they connect with the Den Den Mushi, like, the connection's gonna die, Bon-chan! He's like, Straw Hat, save your brother! Don't worry about me, go on! And then every member of the crew, except for Buggy, because Buggy didn't really care, but everybody else is just off to the side, like, cheering, like, Bon-chan, no! And then the gates of justice shut, and then you have the epic moment between Magellan and Mr. 2, and he's like, do you have any last words? Come at me! And then they just clash. Now, I like to think what happened immediately after that, but what happened afterwards? That's always the question. What happened immediately after that first clash? Well, I have a pretty good idea what happened, and I can explain. I think this syncs up with everything that went down, okay? I think Magellan beat the ever-loving crap out of Mr. 2, okay? I think, because Mr. 2, like I said, he was already beat up. He did have the adrenaline pumping. He did have the energy hormones going, but I think he maybe got a shot in or two on Magellan, but I think Magellan, he didn't poison him, but he, like, just, boom, just punched him really hard. And the fight was looking pretty bad for Mr. 2. It was looking like he was about to get taken out in the control room there. And then that's, right at that time, though, that was when Magellan got a call, like, Magellan, there's been a mass breakout at level 6. Like, all of the criminals down here are going crazy. We can't do anything to stop them. Shiryu is with them, the Blackbeard crew down here. This is absolute pandemonium. You need to get down here. You're the only one left. And so Magellan is like, oh, damn it! And so, at that point, that takes way more precedent than just taking out Mr. 2. Because level 6 prisoners, Blackbeard and Shiryu, are now running crazy on level 6, and there's going to be even another mass breakout right after this mass breakout, which there was. So, it's like, yeah, I have to go deal with that. I don't have time to deal with you. And so, he leaves. And maybe Mr. 2 at that point managed to, he was bleeding, but he wasn't unconscious. He was like, and he just climbs, he's in the middle of the control room. Maybe all the other guards that were in there, they got knocked out during their fight. Like when Mr. 2 was in the middle of like his memoirs of a summer's day, and he's knocking out all the guards while he's doing it. So he gets back up, everybody else is gone, and he's like, I gotta get out of here. And he's Mr. 2, he's smart enough to realize, like, I can't join them. I would love to join them to go to Marineford, but the gates are shut. All of the battleships are gone, and I'm sure the security is already at the top to make sure Blackbeard and everybody else doesn't get out. So it's like, I need to figure out a way to get out of this. And so what he does is, Ivankov did mention earlier in the arc, there are entrances to New Kamaland in every level of Impel Down, even the mortuary. So I'm sure Mr. 2 had his options, and maybe he knew where to look, and he's like, alright, I'm gonna find an entry. He was like up in like level 1, so maybe he went into level 1 and he found the secret entrance to New Kamaland, managed to get back down there. Now, at this point, everyone was gone, because the New Kama all joined in Ivankov. That was their leader, and they followed him till the end, basically. So New Kamaland was basically vacant, and so he had it to himself, and maybe he recovered down there, figured out a way to, patched himself up or whatever, and then he decided, he's like, well, I can imagine him walking out into the stage of New Kamaland. It's completely empty. He's got a bar. He's got all the food that's still there, and the booze and everything. And he's got this awesome light setup for the stage and all this stuff. He's got electric guitars that they just happen to have down there. And he's like, well, I guess I'm stuck here for the foreseeable future. So screw it, I'm the new queen of New Land, and he does. He becomes the new queen, and slowly I'm sure after everything died down, after the escapees were taken care of, and they fixed all of the doors, and Magellan was demoted. Well, I think he accepted he was gonna off himself. He was like, I've committed the ultimate sin. I can't go long, so he was gonna just end it. But Sengoku managed to keep him alive. He's like, no, we still need you. So he accepted a demotion in lieu of the other thing. And so he's the vice warden, and Hannibal became the actual warden. I think after everything began to settle down at that point, he started to recruit new members to New Land. He's like, come with me. He like, I can imagine the criminals, they're in their cells, like on level 2, afraid of being attacked by giant beasts, and then all of a sudden a brick moves, and Mr. 2 just appears and like, hey, want to get out of here? Come with me to the paradise of New Kama. And it's like, oh, okay, fine. Getting eaten by a sphinx or following you, strange swan man. Okay, fine, I'll just go with you. So they leave, and he rebuilds New Land, and when we see it later on in the cover page, we don't get to see Mr. 2's face, but he's there, and he's wearing a much more elaborate outfit at this point, and everybody's around him cheering him on, like, yes, have a good day, and so that's how he is. That's where he's at right now. He's continuing on Ivankov's legacy. Maybe someday Ivankov will go back to Impel Down after they've maybe taken out the Tenryubito and they've done an overhaul of the world government. And when that happens, maybe they can just basically walk into Impel Down and be like, well, we took out the Tenryubito and the Revolutionary Army are kind of in control of this stuff right now. So at this point, they just walk into Impel Down and like, we need to free a prisoner, and then that's when they go and rescue him and they bring him back to Kamabaka, where he really belongs. Let's be honest here. So, that's Mr. 2. He's still in the series. I don't think he's going to be appearing in the New World. I mean, that'd be pretty cool if he did, but I think right now he's where, he's serving his purpose. He's doing what Ivankov did for years, providing a safe haven for all of the prisoners of Impel Down, providing them food and drink and just a good old-fashioned time, and that's really what he's, like, I think that's what he wants there. I mean, he also wants Luffy to continue on his dream, but, saving others, that's what he's been doing up until this point, so why stop now, basically? So yes, that is the tale of the glorious Swan, Mr. 2 Bonclay. His real name is actually Bentham. Not really as epic as Mr. 2 Bonclay. And by the way, the reason he has that, I'm sure most people know, but all of the officer agents of Baroque Works, of course, they have a male, officer agent that's like named after a number, and then a female kind of sidekick assistant agent that's named after a holiday. Well, Mr. 2, of course, he's a cross-dresser, he's an Okama, so he takes both the male and female positions, so it's Mr. 2 and then Bonclay. Bonclay being a festival, in the Obon Festival in Japan. So that's what that, translates out to there. Also, something strange. In the Vivara card data book information we got about him, I think it was last month, yeah, we find out, number one, he's from the East Blue originally, so that's pretty cool. And also, his epithet before he joined up with Baroque Works was Bentham of the Wilderness. You explain to me how that really makes sense. I mean, I don't know what that really relates to. I'm trying to think, like, does the wilderness relate to something for him being an Okama? Like, I don't really see the immediate connection there unless he was like running around the wilderness, just like, I am just the wandering Okama, but he also had a bounty at this point. He was wanted by the Marines, so he was doing something. I don't know. But yeah, his epithet before he was Mr. 2 Bonclay was Bentham of the Wilderness, so take that whatever you will. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this lovely Valentine's Day. I'm gonna go and devour these right now. These are a great way to spend the holidays, so I would recommend go get yourself some Reese miniatures. Have a good one. This will be Tekking101 signing out. And remember, everyone, oh, come my way.